Well, we've got second round bids in for Warner Brothers Discovery. What do you make of this? Is any of this a great idea?
No, it's all terrible.
Welcome to Ankler Agenda. It's Wednesday, December 3rd. I'm your host, Elaine Lowe, staff writer at The Ankler and author of the weekly series business newsletter, where we cover everything about the TV industry. I am here with Sean McNulty of The Wake Up in New York.
It's freezing.
And Natalie Jarvie of Like and Subscribe in LA.
I'm pretty cold here, too.
Oh, yeah? Oh, really? Is it below
it's hit
70?
A balmy 65 degrees,
Oh,
Sean.
my God.
Everybody in LA
right?
is in a puffer jacket.
It is the season where it takes half the day for my house to warm up, so I'm currently in a sweater and I've got big bulky socks on.
Forgot my violin the one day on the podcast.
Well, today we're going to talk about Natalie's chat with Patreon CEO Jack Conte and his Zootopia, where we're not melting our brains on social media, as well as the budding fight between Patreon and Substack over content creators. Then we'll get into the next chapter of the tug of war over Warner Brothers Discovery as it puts itself up for sale. We'll examine the second round bids from Netflix, Paramount, and Comcast. Which combination of properties would be best for the business? Are we looking at a Warner Mount, a Netflix Brothers, a Warner Cast, NBC Brothers? We haven't quite figured out the name for the Comcast one. But which of these potential buyers needs Warner's the most? And then we'll top it off with a new Rushfield's Rant. I know you missed him, where the Ankler himself, Richard Rushfield, has some spicy thoughts about the whole WBD saga. But first, let's take a quick peek at the box office, where Wicked for Good did predictably very well over Thanksgiving week and weekend. But Zootopia 2 did even better than expected. Did either of you watch either of these movies?
I think you know my answer, Natalie.
No, unfortunately, we didn't make it to the theater over Thanksgiving weekend, but I will be seeing these movies eventually.
I did
Zootopia 2, I would think. Yeah, probably. And Elaine, they're probably too old. Are your kids into Zootopia, Elaine, or are they age out of this?
Very much so in the Zootopia demo. We went to go see Zootopia 2 at the Universal City Walk AMC on Black Friday, which is like the day to go see movies, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not thinking about the turkey anymore. You're doing a little shopping. Outside of that, there's like nothing else to do, and the whole family is together. Okay. But it did really, really well. It was like almost sold out. It was so hard to get tickets same day.
Thumbs up? Good? Do you recommend? Or the kids like it or what?
I mean,
we can move on, Elaine. You don't need to say anything else. It's fine.
It was quippy.
Okay.
Bob Iger made a cameo as Bob Tiger.
Bob Tiger? Come on. What else do you want, Elaine?
What else could you want? Clearly, the audience was like going for it, right, Sean? What were those numbers?
Was there a Josh or Dana cameo? Because that's really the tea leaves we want to have here. So, I mean, if that were really playing, devil's advocate, that would have been the way to go there. But we'll figure out Josh's funny name for another time.
Reading these Succession tea leaves through who makes a cameo in Zootopia 2.
Who's the sports person? Yeah, exactly. China's the big story, which has kind of been out there, but it's, over $270 million in China, which in 2025 is just like, this isn't, it's the second biggest, American film opening in China ever, only behind Endgame. It's like, which is nuts. So the first one did do very well there. It wasn't like this was, an unprecedented thing, but that was 2016, which might as well be in 1996 at this point in terms of the China box office history. So, good for Disney. They only traditionally keep about 25% of that money. So financially, it's a little bit of a facade there a little bit. But to make over $500 million in total box office in your opening 5 days is, fantastic. So, kudos to the Disney team. A big opening.
And something from Disney Animation, too, not like Pixar or one of these others.
Yeah, it's a homegrown, if you will, homegrown property there at Disney there for sure.
You mentioned that the first film came out in 2016. It's pretty remarkable to have a sequel come out so many years later and perform so well. I mean, kids could have aged out of the Zootopia bracket. So it just shows the strength of this IP, I think, for them.
Yeah, we're seeing this a few times here. I mean, Lilo and Stitch was 20 years. But I mean, from a theatrical point of view, and that was live action and, kind of animation, but still from a theatrical property that didn't have a recent sequel. Moana, the big, the last Thanksgiving, which, again, that set the big, this year's box office was down because Moana was so huge last year. That set the record all time for Thanksgiving last year. But that movie captured that zeitgeist, Elaine, of like 10 years, kind of the people bringing their kids and people who grew up with it. So that, there is this kind of sweet spot that Disney tries to ride with these revivals. Now, will bringing Moana back again this summer be a little much? We'll see how that goes. But yeah.
It's like a semi-nostalgia factor when you have it sort of at a weird in-between like that, where it's like less than 10 years, or in the case of Zootopia 2, some weird romantic tension between a bunny and a fox. But that is a conversation for anybody who's actually seen the movie.
Some plot questions there about that. I'm all about the sloth. He made me laugh, so kudos to Disney on that one.
Well, over Thanksgiving break, I tried and failed to not log an embarrassing number of hours on my phone over the break. But I did watch the 7-minute video on a New York Times opinion page from Patreon CEO Jack Conte advocating for a creator-first internet that isn't designed to make you addicted to your phone. Natalie, he talked to you about this over on Like and Subscribe. You've got this great Q&A with him that's out this week. What's his vision for this, and how feasible is it as a business model? Because it sounds very pie in the sky.
Yeah. I've been interested in the Patreon business for a while. It's not a new business. It's been around for a long time, but they've been making some interesting moves. I've been wanting to talk to Jack for a bit, and then I saw that New York Times opinion video, and it's a really well-produced video. I highly recommend checking it out, and I thought I just have to call him up and talk to him more about these ideas that he was sharing. Jack basically has long kind of been anti-algorithm. He believes that algorithms are rotting our brains, making us addicted to social media. He himself limits his social media use. He says he'll only allow himself 10 minutes a day on Instagram, for example. Wow. But he also acknowledges that the internet has gotten to a point where we can't really put the genie back in the bottle. We can't go to a pre-algorithm internet. So how do you solve for this? How do you make an algorithm that maybe prioritizes different things? And at Patreon, he's starting to build that and introduce that, which I think is pretty interesting. As a concept, anyway, because Patreon has long been kind of this platform where YouTube creators, musicians, podcasters can build a subscription business and kind of a membership or program and sell, either one-off videos or, a membership to a larger community. Why does Patreon even need social media kind of elements? Why do they even need an algorithm in the first place? What he told me is that that's something that creators have said that they want from Patreon. They can't really build new audience on Patreon. They have to build it elsewhere. So if he's going to try to build more discovery tools, he wants to do it in a way that is quote unquote healthier, which for him means really prioritizing a human interaction. So there are still going to be like creator recommendations and fan recommendations and like real human curation. He also wants to really focus on the signal of if you subscribe to someone, that means something. You want to see their content. They're not going to show you a bunch of other content from a bunch of other people you didn't subscribe to. They'll show you some of that if there's overlap in the kind of interest graph between one creator and another, but they're also going to show you the back catalog of that creator's content so that you can maybe discover things that they released 3 years ago that you maybe didn't see at the time. And he says the way he describes it is that he wants to help you kind of fall in love with that creator and with their content, whether it's new content or old content.
I thought it was interesting how he laid out the 3 priorities that he feels like the internet should be. The 3 things that the internet should be are it should prioritize long-term relationships, fund art, not ads, and put humans in control, which all sounds great, right? But it's like, as a business model, that also sounds really difficult. And I wonder if you're, like you said, you're seeing some of that because they have to still have some kind of social media element in Patreon. And then as they're battling it out with, another big platform like Substack, which does have a lot of these like social media elements where you can write like notes and do all of these other things, it presents a real challenge.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Patreon has existed for 12 years, kind of in its current iteration. It didn't need those things. But now a lot of creators are starting to look around and say, maybe I don't want to be on Instagram or X or these other platforms. So there's an opportunity for Patreon to lean into that. But in order to do that, they need to have these discovery tools. And to your point, Patreon is now facing more competition than it really has ever faced in the history of its business. And that's because of new platforms like Substack, like Beehive. There are a lot more places that creators can go to build memberships and build community. And if Patreon wants to compete against those platforms, they need to start to develop some of these tools like those other platforms have.
And I mean, he's also managed to woo away some major Substack creators like Anne Helen Peterson, namely, is the main one I can think of.
Yeah, she's the author of Culture Study, which has been one of the top Substack newsletters for a long time. She was an early adopter of Substack. It's a big deal that she moved over to Patreon, and Patreon has been really leaning into a lot of newsletter tools. They started this a few years ago with the acquisition of a company called Memberful. They largely started doing this because podcasters and musicians and other people wanted to be able to release newsletters. And as they started to build out these newsletter products, it's suddenly a lot more appealing as a platform for people whose bread and butter is newsletters.
And it's such an interesting dynamic, right? This tension between like, we want to just create stuff for creating's sake and we want people to engage with it on a personal level versus like, you have to build a sustainable business out of this. And like, that's also the sort of the fundamental tension, Sean, that we see in Hollywood as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about your brand, if you will, but which, Patreon's kind of, it was 12 years ago, Natalie, it kind of was so it's 2014, right? So, I mean, Patreon in my mind is like the OG of this, kind of business model. When you've seen things rise up since then, OnlyFans, I'll put in this category as well. Different genre of programming, but exact same idea. And then Substack kind of came up and, we should mention the Ankler is based on Substack as well, but, came along and really, I'm going to say Patreon's lunch, but like showed you, hey, you missed out on this whole market you could have probably been building. Because it was basically like, it was Patreon and you had like MailChimp or was that Tiny Letter? What was the other one? Really not, I mean, I use MailChimp, but I'm...
All these like micro eras of these.
Yeah, exactly. But the same idea of like build your audience and MailChimp is more of just a tool to use to make newsletters. But now Patreon's kind of coming back and being like, we want in on this stuff because you know what? In the past, since COVID, all these other businesses have grown up and we were doing it first. And now we want to introduce the things that everybody else has kind of iterated on that maybe they were, I'll just say, reading that, it's like, I think you're a little late on this stuff and you didn't quite realize what you had here that's now become, to your point, the creator of the economy of this, which is building your own audience. And as the algorithms, as my Instagram feed becomes, I have not seen a post from a friend, and I don't even know how long on that thing, unless I go to the following tab on top. You can't follow.
Noted LinkedIn influencer Sean McNulty.
Or even, exactly. Well, LinkedIn is a whole other conversation. Yes,
you've been very big on LinkedIn lately,
I've
Sean.
always been big on day one. My LinkedIn's always been in my newsletter.
So modest too.
Exactly. That's it. You all can have Instagram. I'm taking LinkedIn, so it's all right. We are a business newsletter, but it is interesting just to see kind of the tactics emerge here. And as the social media platforms have evolved away from that, as you said, hit subscribe. I want to see stuff from this person. You don't get that a lot on social media. And this is what came through Natalie was he was really leaning into that of like, you're going to see the stuff you want to see, which I think is a real problem perhaps for social media where like you're just not seeing stuff that you used to see that from people So I like it's an interesting evolution for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Sean, Substack made a lot of this business cool, They created a real kind of press cycle around people launching newsletters and building these subscription businesses. And Patreon definitely needs to catch up in, kind of making it cool to have a Patreon, making it easier to find the people whose Patreons already exist. And we'll see if they're successful at doing that. I mean, I did ask him, to your point about this tension of like the business side of things. He's not super pro advertising. And I did ask him about, well, Patreon has grown up during this period of time where we've seen kind of the rise of subscription, the rise of Netflix, the rise of, subscription video services Spotify, in Hollywood.
They used to be one of the few subscription plays, and now everybody's a subscription play.
Right. Exactly. What happens when we reach peak subscription? What happens when people tire of subscribing to everything in their life? And
I
they
reach reached peak subscription like 2 years ago.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people have. And, you know, they're doing some interesting things there with like one-time payments. That's a feature he says is growing a lot faster than subscriptions for them.
That's interesting.
So we'll have to see how all of these businesses, Substack has been very, also kind of not super supportive of advertising up to this point. How do these businesses start to evolve and start to prioritize means of making money for themselves and for their creators versus some of these kind of more idealistic views on, how to make the internet good?
I do think micropayments is a really interesting business model,
too.
one that journalism might be able to learn from. But we'll have to see what 2026 holds for Patreon versus Substack. Speaking of 2026, I would also love if any of our listeners and viewers out there would fill out our poll over here at The Ankler about what you're expecting for the new year. What's one thing you would love to see banished? What's like a hot word you would love to see banished from Hollywood in 2026? What's something you want to see make a comeback? Tell us a little bit about how your career has been. You can find that over we've got a link in the Monday edition of Series Business and in the Monday edition of The Wake Up as well. And you can also find it in our show notes on this pod or in the section below our YouTube video. So make sure you look there. We're very interested to hear what you think, and the responses we've gotten so far are very interesting. We now have a second round of bids for Warner Brothers Discovery this week. No new buyers as far as we can tell, but a sweetened, mostly cash bid from Netflix now, as well as a higher priced semi-Saudi backed bid from Paramount, and Comcast is also there. So, Sean, does that sound right? Is that the correct breakdown?
You're pretty spot on. Is kind of how this is going around so far. Yeah, and there's Comcast. Yes, exactly. I mean, it's on brand for a cable company, I think, to not be the flashiest
and we're
of the
also
three.
Here.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's telling that we don't really know yet what the Comcast Warner Brothers Discovery, combined name would be, right? Com Brothers.
Nothing catchy. Com Brothers.
Well, it's like NBCU and Warner Brothers, so it's not Comcast, and so it's like almost like Warner U, and it's or something like
Warner
that, which
U,
is
yeah.
It's kind of where the NBC is still the lead of that that outfit, which is like NBC is not the key cornerstone of that business anymore, but it's interesting.
NBC WBD.
Now we're back to an odd chart.
All the letters of the alphabet.
There's no D in it, it's just WB. I think I don't know. Anyway, we'll figure it out.
Well, that's right, because Comcast and Netflix only want the studios and streaming, and Paramount wants the whole kit.
Yeah, exactly. And that hasn't changed in the second round of bidding here, Elaine. And these bids are binding, unlike the first one. So these are, it's stepping up a notch. And,
so no takebacks.
Or that's to put it another way, Elaine. Exactly. The no takeback stage. That's where we've entered, Elaine.
That's what the finance people call it.
Exactly. To put it in financial terms. Yes, exactly.
So if we're looking at these combinations, then what is the most optimal combination for? I guess let's look at it this way. What's the healthiest combination for the business? Do you have any thoughts on what would be great for the business? Richard certainly has thoughts on this, which you'll all hear later. But I'm curious what you guys think.
I mean, probably just the old plan of splitting and staying independent would probably be the best way. That is also still an option, by the way. Although I'm very curious what would happen if Wall Street did not get a deal out of this, what their reaction would be to the stock prices. But that aside, I still think Paramount's probably seen as the best option of the three. And again, this is probably more through the lens of the movie business, I think, is really the biggest concern out of all this stuff. I think, from a streaming point of view, it's a little bit like, well, again, these streamers kind of have to combine at some point. And, you're not going to have a real...
But wait, why does a Paramount Pictures need a Warner Brothers Motion Pictures?
Well, actually, so they announced a couple of tent poles for 2028 this week, which I broke down in the Wake Up. This is Paramount I'm talking about for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and another Sonic movie and coming in Christmas time 2028 for those fans there at home.
For the 1996 crowd.
Yeah, exactly. But I really took a dive and I broke all the numbers down in the Wake Up this week. You can check them out. But, the franchises at Paramount are nowhere near the franchises at Warner Brothers. I mean, their biggest ones are the ones that are also the furthest away. That'd be Mission Impossible and Transformers. Like there's really not, and Top Gun, if you want to put that as the kind of the third one, even though there's only 2 movies there. But everything else, they do fine, but they're doing under $500 million total globally. and you can go to Warner Brothers and they have 45 films that came out in the past 20, 25 years that grossed over, $500 million. So the scale of the franchises and the IP at Warner's is really head and shoulders above, the things that Paramount owns. Now, the things when it's SpongeBob and it's, Sonic. And,
right. I was going to say Paramount's got all these iconic brands. They've got MTV. They've got Star Trek. They've got, but these are things people know, right? Like Nickelodeon. It's really storied houses within this company.
Sure. And on the TV side, that's fine for those brands. But, theatrically speaking, these brands, their franchises or whatever you want to call them, they're not the bangers they're not Jurassic Park, and they're not, the Minions, and they're not Dune for that matter, or, much less the DC world, the Batmans. They don't have anything really the only thing they have of that level really was Transformers. And that's kind of been on the downtick for quite a few years here. That was kind of the Michael Bay era, which you're going back a good 12 years at this point for the last one, I think. So, there is that factor of it from a movie point of view is why I say that really is why, where if you go to NBCU, the other players in the mix here, Elaine, they have Jurassic, they have Fast and Furious, they have Minions. More is great, but they're not exactly, they're in a much stronger position, I should say, at Universal. Netflix is a whole other, they want all that IP, obviously.
Well, you look at Netflix and it's like, does Netflix really need a Warner Brothers at all? I talk to people on the TV side and it's like Netflix has still remained the most voluminous buyer. Like they're the ones with the deep pockets still, even if they're maybe not as, they're not throwing around as much money as they used to. Natalie, I know you've been interested in seeing a Netflix Warner Brothers combination. We also saw a Reuters story pop up yesterday where apparently somebody told Reuters that Netflix's proposed acquisition here is expected to reduce streaming costs for consumers by bundling Netflix and HBO Max, according to two people familiar with the proposal.
Who could have said that to Reuters? You're right that Netflix doesn't need Warner Brothers in the same way. And though, there has been some reporting that Netflix would continue to release Warner Brothers movies in theaters, there becomes that bigger question of, whether we would lose a lot of theatrical movie inventory because Netflix has historically not prioritized theatrical distribution for its movies. But to Sean's point, it really does feel like, what Netflix could gain from this are the franchises. It's the IP. Harry Potter at Netflix would be really interesting. A Dune at Netflix would be really interesting too. They could definitely stand to beef up their franchise business over there.
And they've also said they'll continue to still sell to third parties, is what I understand. Right, Sean?
That's the interesting part, because you're kind of the two elements you're getting there. HBO Max will be kind of, again, dissolved or whatever, put into Netflix. So then you have the TV studio and the movie studio. So yes, the movie studio, they will, you have the head of the company who has multiple times kind of crapped on the movie business. So that's just the person, even regardless of what their strategy might be, you don't have a person running the company who believes in the business. It's like, he's not going to, it's just not going to be his whole heart behind it.
Wait, and so let me get this straight. The things that are in the pipeline is Netflix saying anything you already have on the schedule, we will honor, but anything else down the line past whatever, 2028 or whatever it is, like, who's to say maybe we'll release it directly to Netflix?
Yeah, whatever was like contractually obligated to be in theaters, like it's essentially avoiding Project Popcorn, where they had to go out and pay out everybody because, people's contracts and payment schedules are based on percentage of gross and things like that. When you take that away, you got to buy them out. So Netflix is like, well, we're not going to go redo all the old deals, which obviously Project Popcorn ruffled a lot of feathers in that regard. So they're not, that from a talent relations point of view alone, Elaine, they're like, no, we'll put, we'll honor what's contracted. But that was it. There was no other there was no other part of that statement that was out there, which didn't get a lot of nuance. A lot of the coverage out there was like, oh, they're going to keep theatrical. I'm like, no, they didn't say that. They said they weren't going to go back and redo the old deals. But then you go back to the TV business, which Elaine, Warner's is, I guess, arguably the biggest.
Warner's is prolific. They sell to everybody. And like, I've already heard people lamenting to me of, oh my gosh, what happens when this goes away? What happens when WB TV goes away and suddenly you don't have this robust system where they're still producing producing and, selling to outside buyers, because you need this transactional environment. You can't have a completely vertically integrated environment at every single shop.
Right. And Warner's has never had the broadcast networks. They've always been that kind of, they own Friends. They own these things that they never even aired, So indications are that Netflix has indicated or, told somebody who told somebody who's like, no, we're going to kind of keep that going. And as Netflix continues to mature, the advertising business is probably still the lead revenue growth driver for the near future. But at a certain point, you're going to probably start to top out there. How do you find other levers to pull in the future to have, revenue growth? And the TV studio Warner's, makes a lot of money and has the whole library of licensing, much less either on Netflix or selling to other parties. So that call me optimistic there, Elaine, a little bit of I think they wouldn't be like, nope, we're going to keep all these in-house for Netflix now. I think they would, maybe not to the same exact degree, but they still own Ted Lasso. They own so many great properties that it's like you're going to keep all this stuff.
You're not going to cut off all these revenue streams needlessly, right?
Then why buy it? Why are you paying this money for this thing?
But that's what I'm saying. Why buy it then if you were to think about shutting down those streams? That part just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand it.
I'm right next to you, Elaine. So,
but it does ultimately signal a pretty fundamental shift in how Netflix has done business to date. That would be really interesting to track how that would change what Netflix is as a company and what their priorities are moving forward, and whether they have the right kind of muscle to work in those areas of the business, right? Netflix has never been a seller of TV before. Presumably they would acquire some talent who know how to do that, but that's still a big shift in how Netflix would have to think about its business.
Yeah, but that's also part of the DNA, right? They're going to do advertising. You know what? They built that thing pretty damn fast. It's like they weren't going to be in gaming, they never mentioned gaming wasn't part of the DNA. Now that's increasingly becoming a big part of what they're pushing out there now.
They weren't going to go after live sports rights. There's a lot of things that they've said over the years. Netflix is a very different business today than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, to their credit. To their credit.
I was going to say, to their credit, having that Silicon Valley, move fast and break things mindset can be helpful in legacy Hollywood. Are we forgetting anyone? Oh, right, Comcast. So, Sean, what's the deal with Comcast? Who needs who more in this situation? What happens to Peacock?
I think Peacock is, a goner in this situation. I don't think there's any real, I can't think of a rationale as to why you would even, keep that in any regard in that sense. It loses money. HBO Max is much bigger. It's global, et cetera, et cetera. Again, this is, back to the DNA of this. This would be Comcast really, again, becoming much more of a global company. Again, they're primarily a U.S. and arguably UK-based company with Sky. It's a step up. Not that they can't change what they are, and that's an evolution. But it's not just like Paramount is a little more of a global company for, again, MTV, Nickelodeon. Those brands are global around the world. They've been in that for decades, so they have a history there. Where NBC is not a global brand. The most global brand is CNBC, from their cable network point of view. So that's the change in that. They would not a shocking piece of news this week, but they would kind of combine NBCU and Warner's into a division, if you will. So within Comcast, not necessarily spinning out, but Versant would still happen. The cable networks would still be out of that company, not part of that mix. So
NBCU, we already know, does not want those most cable networks. It's not that we've seen them spin off most of them with Versant.
Versant will happen, exactly. So it's a little. It sounds back to your question initially about the three choices here. It's like that one from a movie point of view sounds like they're going to do a Disney Fox a little bit of all right, we're going to keep maybe a few Warner titles, but I'd probably just be the Avatars of the world and things along those lines. And the other stuff would probably fall off, So that's the other thing about it. That's why I say Paramount. Seemingly, again, it's all words at this point, but Ellison has said 25 movies a year. It's, he's put those numbers out there, and it's like, okay, well, NBCU has done none of that kind of language, Elaine.
It is interesting to think about which executives consolidate power in these various scenarios. We haven't really talked about Donna Langley, who has taken on a lot more oversight of business within NBC Universal. Donna suddenly in charge of all of the Warner Brothers film and TV studios is pretty interesting. I mean, she's had a lot of success and is very well respected in this town. Then on the flip side, you've got, Ted Sarandos over at Netflix, who I think always has operated a little bit like a kind of old school Hollywood mogul. Back, pre-COVID, I would hear stories about him being down in the lobby of Netflix and all these stars coming through, and, you know, kind of it really felt like this golden age of Hollywood. And you know, I think he would embrace that role in Hollywood, you know, overseeing a larger film and TV studio. And then on the Paramount side, you've got David Ellison and, you know, his camp. So it's just very interesting to kind of consider who would Hollywood want to have actually, you know,
the face
not just
of this,
be the face of this storied studio.
That is a good question. Everybody out there, podcast@theankler.com. Who would you want to be the face of this if any of these companies winds up acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery?
We should also mention Zaz is also...
I was just literally about to say love lost for Zaz in many pockets of the industry. So I have a hard time imagining him that he would be anywhere on this list.
No, but he was, I mean, as part of getting this deal done, there are these things that making it sweet, giving something for Zaz to do. And, you know, Ellison had put that out there as maybe a floater, a co-CEO, I think, or something on those lines, you know, and NBC was also nodded to a role. So there is that, will he be a part of this? And I think, Natalie, no matter what that is, though, I think, you know, if it goes to NBCU, Donna's now, I mean, as much, even if Zaz goes with it, it's like, no, you work for NBCU, Comcast now, you're not, you know, so perception wise, even if he does go, I think you're right, Natalie, it'll be kind of one of those three faces will be the new one up with the Iger or whoever, or Josh or Dana or whoever else is going to be the next face of Disney to be the real leaders of this business.
Well, Richard Rushfield certainly has some thoughts, which we will switch to now. He has some, well, I wouldn't say nihilistic, optimistic. He's got some big picture thoughts.
I would never say optimistic, Elaine. That's never. We were doing our Zootopia chat, which was all and Wicked, and he still was like, well, I don't have too much to say here. And I'm like, could we just say congratulations for once? You know, so I was trying to get that out of him on Monday, but to no avail. So,
well, here's what Richard has to say about the state of Warner Brothers Discovery. We had you off for a week last week, Richard, so now you're back with double the firepower.
That's right. Lots of extra ranting I'm bringing to the table today.
Well, we've got second round bids in for Warner Brothers Discovery. What do you make of this? Is any of this a great idea?
No, it's all terrible. These are all people that own competitive studios. None of these bids under a normal antitrust regime would be considered possible. You know, we have an example of what happened here. It just happened just 5 years ago. Yes, Disney bought Fox and made lots of assurances of how Fox was going to continue to be an independent company and function on its own. And then we see how that worked out. Fox is gone. And that will be the result of a competitive studio buying one of their competitors up. It will be bad for the producers of entertainment, for the artists, for the crafts people, and it'll be bad for the consumers of it, who will see their selection go down and their prices rise. So,
but what's the alternative? Having a telecom company come in and buy one of these studios out? We've seen that before too with Warner's.
Well, yeah, we saw that they weren't, and AT&T was not great owners, but Warner survived as an independent company, and it had a lot, and it made its own series, and it was another when you were selling a show or a movie, you had another place to bid. If you were, you know, a teamster or a craft person, you had more options for your work. We accept that, like, a lot of people don't like Paramount because they don't like the Trump side of it. I don't love that either, but we've accepted this idea that David Zaslav has to sell Warner's. It just has to happen. And you know, it's like someone saying, well, I have to murder someone, so you get to choose. Do I do it by burning them at the stake, by poison, or with a knife? And you say, well, I guess poison's the least bad way. Instead of saying, no, you don't get to murder people in this country. You don't get to kill a studio, shut it down. And if this were a normal oversight regime, none of these would be entertained or be allowed.
Okay, I think mergers and murders are a little bit different here, but I
murdering
kind of get what you're saying.
Studio, and many thousands of people will be out of work. The entertainment ecosystem will be hurt. The film system, which is tottering already, to lose one of it. You know, I did a chart of what this year's box office would look like if there had been no Warner Brothers this year. And if that had been this year's box office, everybody would be saying it's over. The theater chains would be shutting down wholesale, and you know we really would be talking about wrapping this up right. right now.
I mean, certainly one of the merits of having Warner Brothers in the mix is, on the TV and film side, it is, especially on the TV side, it's a prolific seller to other streamers and networks still in a way that you don't really see in any of the other studios that are really vertically integrated.
Yeah, you just have another player on the field and another company doing all kinds of things, another buyer. If you are an entertainment consumer, you have another choice out there, keeping downward pressure on prices and making more diverse selection.
But what's the alternative here? I mean, if Warner Brothers Discovery has determined that it isn't feasible to continue on,
that's their decision. John Malone declared he wants to make more money. Like, great, good for him. He wants to make more money. We don't have to. The entire society doesn't have to reorder itself because David Zaslav and John Malone want to make more money, and they are the only people who come out to the benefit of this deal.
Well, what's the alternative here if we are looking at a scenario then where there is going to be another buyer and you don't like Paramount, Netflix, or Comcast as one of those buyers?
The alternative is one of the 10,000 billionaires who is on the planet who does not currently own one of the 5 studios. Like
you want somebody else coming in from the outside.
Or you don't sell it, or you don't get to sell it. I'm sorry, you don't get to say, like, I'm sorry, I need to make more money off this transaction, so the only way for me to do that is to shut the studio down. And everybody's like, oh, well, I guess
but that's every capitalist company, right? Like, we need to make more money.
We have antitrust rules and we have monopoly rules that would apply if we had a normal oversight in the White House. But we don't have to treat that as normal. We don't have to say that killing a studio is all right and that killing a studio is okay with us because they guess they got to sell it.
Well, I'd be curious what all of our listeners and viewers think. Make sure you email us at podcast@theankler.com. Thanks as always for your time though, Richard.
My pleasure.
That's a wrap on Ankler Agenda. Thanks for joining us. And if you like today's episode, make sure you leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Take our latest poll on Spotify and subscribe to The Ankler on YouTube so you know when all of our latest episodes drop. Thank you so much to Sean McNulty, Natalie Jarvie, and Richard Rushfield. I'm Elaine Lowe. We'll see you next week on Ankler Agenda.